Good evening, everyone. We will tackle about the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve model. The Ebbinghaus forgetting curve model is an exponential relationship between the memory retention and time proposed by Hermann Ebbinghaus. According to this model, the individual's knowledge fades in a matter of days or weeks if no effort is made to embed it. It means that mag-fade ang memory or ang knowledge sa isa ka student kung dili dili niya istudihan or i-apply ang iyang learned or past knowledge in their daily life or in their academic. Also, in an article by Wadsworth 2019, he mentioned in particular its implication to college. Students who after a day or two of attending classes will have forgotten 75% of what was learned, and that forgetting occurs within the first hour. Although this is said to be a natural process, it is possible to disrupt the process, and this is through studying and reviewing the past lessons. As a student, I agree with this theory or model. Kasagaran man jud sa kanang mga estudyante kay makalimot jud sa kanang gidiscuss sa teacher kanang after week or even days after the discussion, like kung pangutan-on unsay last gid discuss kay manghilom or topic lang itubag dili gani kanang elaborate. So kailangan pa sa teacher i-recap para ma-remember. Parehas nako labi nag-math pag kanang gidiscuss karon no ang certain nga formula or problem solving kay makalimot na ko after pila ka oras or makalimot ko pagkaugma, kailangan pa kanang itudlo sa kog balik ba para ma-remember nako. So ing anang idea sa Ebbinghaus forgetting curve model kanang makalimot ka sa kanang sa mga past learnings nimo. So enable para ma-remember to nimo kay kailangan nimo studyhan or i-review. So Jai.
So, good evening again. Now let us proceed to the history of Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. So, Hermann Ebbinghaus conducted the first study about the forgetting curve in German, which was published in 1885. He tested himself to see if he could retain information after different time periods. The result were plotted in a graph, which is now known as the forgetting curve. So, Ebbinghaus forgetting curve shows how quickly we forget information over time if we make no attempt to retain. Is there any point in investing time and money in course creation and training if learners are unlikely to retain the information we gain? To tackle this challenge, you need to understand what the forgetting curve is and, more importantly, the impactful tactics you can use to overcome it. You're probably more familiar with the forgetting curve than you think, with the effects being felt in everyday life, not just in e-learning. Let's look at an example. You're at a networking event and a potential customer gives you their contact number which you write down on a piece of paper. If you lose that piece of paper, would you remember the phone number an hour? Probably not. Before we try to combat the forgetting curve in e-learning, let's explain exactly what it is. The forgetting curve is a mathematical formula by Hermann Ebbinghaus that originated in 1885. The curve demonstrates the rate at which information is forgetting over time if we don't attempt to retain it. So, since kay na-explain naman ni Johara ganina ang mga rapidly lost memories of learners, maurang to ang sa history of Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. So, Christine.
So about the Ebbinghaus behavioral forgetting curve, Ebbinghaus experimented with his own ability to remember using a list of nonsense syllables like um, mga ano lang out of the world letters like random letters A, B, C, D, D, F, and so on, which he attempted to recall after different lengths of time. His experiences results revealed a number of key aspects of memory, which first, um, memory weakens over time. If we learn something new but then make no attempt to relearn that information, we remember less and less of it as the hours, days, and weeks go by. For example, sa in my situation, natuto ako mag-guitar before, grade 7 ako. Then, after years go by na hindi ako nakakapag-practice ng guitar, I forgot ano na yung chords and how to play the instrument correctly. So, yun yung memory mo sa isang bagay na inaaral mo is nakakalimutan mo siya over time kung hindi mo siya itatry ulit or matututunan ulit. Next is the biggest drop in retention happens soon after learning. This is reflected um, This is reflected by the steep fall of the start of forgetting curve. Without reviewing or reinforcing our learning, our ability to retain the information plummets. For example, you may leave a webinar or meeting with your head full of facts and figures, only to find out that you can remember very little of it at just hours later. So, mahirap talaga mag-retain ng lessons sa isip natin, especially yung synchronous classes. Aminin natin, mahirap mag-retain ng lessons ng asynchronous class. And yun yung hindi tayo nakakapag-retain agad ng stored information sa brain natin. So, nakakalimutan natin ano yung diniscuss, ano yung topics, and all. Like, ang makukuha mo lang information is 10% of the out of 100 and so on. Next is, it's easier to remember things that have meaning. Things with little or no meaning like nonsense syllables, Ebbinghaus tried to learn conform most closely to the forgetting curve. So for instance, if you're listening to a talk on a subject that you don't really understand or have little interest in, you likely forgot it faster than if it were on a subject you found really engaging or exciting. Siyempre, kung meron kang interest sa subject na yun, of course, yung curiosity mo magre-run. So, ma-remember mo siya agad. Kung hindi mo gusto yung subject or yung lesson na dinidiscuss, wala kang mariretain sa mind mo. So, next is, the way something is presented affects learning. The same set of information can be made more or less memorable depending on how well it is communicated. You'll likely find it easier to remember something that's been organized logically and presented clearly, but you may forget that haphazard scribbled shopping list. For example, kung ang present ng teacher mo is hindi siya organized, will you remember it? So, di ba hindi? So, importante talaga kung paano i-represent ng educator or ng student, kung um, paano siya ma-retain ng mind, and it's more easy to remember pag maayos ang pagkakasunod-sunod mo. And lastly, how you feel affects well you remember. So Ebbinghaus believed that physiological factors such as stress and sleep play a significant part in how well we retain information. Many people experience this as vicious cycle. They feel stressed, which makes it harder to remember, creating even more stress. Um, Siyempre, di ba, kung meron kang nasa synchronous class ka tapos antok na antok ka, wala kang maalala mostly sa lessons kasi nga mas na focus yung attention mo sa pagiging antok mo and all. So, in this forgetting curve, this research, it is based back to the 1880s, fun fact. But since it is still widely used and highly regarded, in 2015, a research team successfully reproduced these findings and concluded that these methods and theories still held true. So, if you are worried about forgetting and you want to know how to prevent forgetting and boost your memories, it will be tackled next by the next reporter. That's all. Thank you.